Okay, let's talk about a huge contradiction at the heart of American energy. The United States is, without a doubt, the world's king of nuclear power. But, and this is a big but, it is almost completely dependent on other countries for the very fuel that keeps its lights on. We're going to break down how America basically gave away control of its most critical energy source. And it all starts with just two numbers. First up, this number, 94. That's how many nuclear reactors the U.S. has up and running. It is the biggest fleet on the entire planet, generating about a fifth of the country's electricity. It's this massive, powerful system that should, in theory, guarantee incredible energy independence. But that brings us to our next number, which is a lot smaller. And here it is, 1.5%. That is the shockingly tiny amount of uranium the U.S. actually mines itself to meet its own demand. Let me say that again. The world's biggest user of nuclear fuel produces almost none of it. So you have to ask, where's the other 98.5% coming from? Well, let's take a look at what that gap really means. This chart just lays it all out there, doesn't it? On the left, you see what America needs every single year, a whopping 45 million pounds of uranium. And then on the right, well, that tiny little sliver is what U.S. mines actually managed to dig up. The rest of it? Over 95% of it has to be imported. So the real question isn't just about mining. It's about who actually controls that supply. You know, this massive dependency didn't just happen by accident. Nope, it was a deliberate choice. While other countries were out there aggressively securing uranium all over the world, America pretty much took a seat on the sidelines and just watched. So think of this map as the global chessboard for energy. You see the big players, Canada, France, Russia, China. All of them have companies running mines in multiple other countries. See, they get it. You don't just sit back and hope the fuel shows up. You go out, you find it, you own it, you control it. They're playing a geopolitical game for their energy security. And then you have the United States. Zero. A big, fat zero. Not a single overseas uranium mine is owned or operated by a major American company. The world's biggest customer isn't even in the game. It's a stunning absence, and it has some staggering consequences. And let's put some names to these players. You've got Canada's Cameco all over Kazakhstan and Australia. France's state-backed company Orano is in places like Niger and Canada, sometimes with the French military protecting its assets. Then there's Russia's Rosatom, which has a massive global empire. And of course, China's state-owned giants are buying up pieces of mines from Kazakhstan to Namibia. And the United States? That column is just empty. So how on earth did this happen? I mean, why did the U.S. make a conscious decision to sit out the most important energy race of our time? Well, it's a story of feeling a little too comfortable, a little bit of culture, and one absolutely catastrophic miscalculation. It all really kicks off after the Cold War. Suddenly, that strategic pressure to have a giant stockpile of uranium just vanished. Then, this program called megatons to megawatts hit, and a flood of cheap uranium from dismantled Russian warheads poured onto the market. It felt like the supply was endless. Things felt so secure that the U.S. government actually shut down its own Bureau of Mines. The thinking was, why bother with the hassle of digging when you can just buy it for cheap? And this quote just absolutely nails it. The fundamental, core mistake was this belief that the free market would always come through with a resource this strategic. Washington treated uranium like it was corn or soybeans, not the literal bedrock of its national energy security. This slide gets right to the heart of the whole problem. It comes down to two totally different ways of looking at the world. On one side, you have countries like Russia, China, and even our ally France. They see uranium as a strategic asset, a tool of state power that you have to control. And on the other side, you have the United States, which treated it as just another commodity, something you buy from whoever's selling it cheapest. That one difference, it explains everything. You know, there's also a cultural piece to this. American corporations, they got really focused on things like tech and finance. They kind of developed an aversion to the messy, politically risky, difficult business of overseas mining. That boots-on-the-ground, dirty work of pulling resources out of the earth, it was seen as beneath them. So they just left it for other countries who were more than happy to do it. Okay, so America chose not to do the mining overseas. But you know what? The problem goes so much deeper than that. Let's follow the entire nuclear fuel supply chain step by step and see who's really pulling the strings. So here's the critical part. It's not just the mining. Okay, so after the uranium is dug up, almost all of it imported. It has to be converted. The US has only one facility for that. Then it has to be enriched. The only major enrichment plant on US soil is actually owned by a European company. And it doesn't stop there. Then it's made into fuel rods, mostly by Canadian and French-owned companies. And what about reprocessing the spent fuel? America has zero capability for that, none. So the final verdict here is pretty simple, and it's not good. From the second the ore comes out of the ground to the moment the finished fuel goes into an American reactor, the entire process is dominated by foreign countries. It's like the US built all these amazing cars and then just assumed someone else would build the gas stations and refine the gasoline for them forever. So who are these someone else's? Well, this chart paints a really stark picture of geopolitical reality. Russia and China, together, either control or have a major influence over nearly half of the world's uranium supply and enrichment. And America, the biggest customer in the world, is that tiny little sliver on the chart. Let me put this vulnerability into terms that are really easy to understand. If the United States were totally cut off from foreign uranium today, its entire yearly domestic production could fuel its 94 reactors for about 5 days. That's it. Our adversaries have strategic reserves for decades. The US has a few days' worth of supply. The math is just devastating. Okay, so the situation is definitely grim. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. But it's not hopeless. Washington is finally, slowly starting to wake up to this crisis. The real question is, what can actually be done to undo decades of this neglect and rebuild a secure nuclear fuel supply? Well, the experts have a pretty clear path forward. First, you need a government fund to help U.S. companies actually invest in those overseas mines, just like China and France do. It also means reforming laws that, believe it or not, can make it harder for American companies to compete. And it means guaranteeing prices to encourage new mines here at home and building out the entire fuel cycle, not just hoping one piece of the puzzle will solve everything. But all these policy fixes, all this talk about funds and regulations, it all really boils down to one simple, kind of tough question. After decades of paying other people to do the hard, messy work of resource extraction, is America willing to get its hands dirty again? Is it willing to get back in the mud? Because as this quote makes crystal clear, real energy security isn't about just opening a new mine in Wyoming. It's about owning and controlling the entire chain, from the rock deep in the earth to the finished fuel pellet that goes in the reactor. Russia gets it, France gets it, China definitely gets it. Which leaves us with this final thought. For 30 years, America avoided the dirty work. It avoided the messy business of securing its own fuel supply because it believed the free market would just take care of it. What it's discovering now is that in the world of geopolitics and energy, the dirty work is the only work that really matters. The race was lost not because America lacked resources, but because it lacked the will. The only question now is whether that will can be found again.